Hey, welcome back to the channel, my fellow weather junkies. I'm your host, Greg Majeski, your personal weatherman, bringing you the weather without all that social media hype here on your Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're tracking here with our forecast for today. We're looking at the likelihood yet another hurricane. The endless hurricane season continues. We'll look at the development on this system. We're also going to talk about some of the coldest air of the season coming in for November. So very winter-like temperatures coming in. And of course, with that cold air, let's talk a little bit about snow as well. So we got a plethora of weather out there. Is that a good word to use? I think so. Hey, before we get into this edition here, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? Please go hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you'll learn on future content. And if you appreciate this update, please, as always, give me a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up. It does help with the almighty YouTube algorithm. All right, let's go ahead and take a look right now at our latest satellite imagery. As we got a storm system here in the middle of the country, setting off some rain and some thunder here coming into the Kansas City area. We'll look at that radar here in a second. Got some rains here coming in off the Gulf of Mexico as it got down toward Louisiana as well, and a pretty good vigorous storm system out here on the West Coast as well. Now, as far as our current watches and warnings are concerned, nothing to be concerned out there just yet. We might see some activity, maybe some severe weather down toward Louisiana a little bit later today. A little breezy with some of those brown out here. That's some of those wind advisories, and we have some winter weather advisories in the higher elevations out in California, but really not looking too bad here from coast to coast across the United States. Looking at surface map right now. Again, here's that rains here in the middle of the country. Nice and chilly up here in the 20s and 30s up here across Montana. A lot of heavy rains out here on the West Coast. Heavy mountain snows across Washington State, stretching on all the way down into Northern California. And of course, we got the rains increasing across the southeast. Needed areas, obviously still fighting some drought conditions down in this area. So let's go ahead and take a look at this radar here into Kansas City as we've got the rain here coming up to the morning rush hour for Kansas City. Seeing some of the lightning stretching all the way back down toward areas just north of Tulsa with some of the thunderstorms here, and this will continue to move off toward the east. Had a pretty good clip here for this morning, eventually getting over towards Springfield and over toward Jefferson City a little bit later. Now, speaking of thunderstorms, let's go ahead and shift gears and talk about the latest from the Storms Prediction Center, and let's take a look at what they're expecting with their day one outlook here for today. And we're going to have to break this down a little bit as we've got some activity down here across the south. So we're looking down here across Mississippi, down across Louisiana, and into parts of Alabama. That's our concern there. And you even got some marginal weather here, even along the West Coast. That's something you don't see very often there with that very strong flow and a few thunderstorms there as well. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and take a look at breaking this down by the categories as you're going to see very low risk for maybe seeing some tornadoes and things like that for today. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tornado risk here for today along the Gulf Coast. Again, we're talking about 2% risk, so running very, very low, but it's there for today. So if you're in that part of the country, just be aware of that. Hail risk is non-existent, but the wind threat obviously in the same places there, both on the West Coast here, right along the Washington down to Northern California, and of course down here across the southeast. That'll be the two main areas of concern here for today. Now, along with those storms moving in, obviously we've got a heavy rain threat here, especially across the south. We're getting a little bit of moisture feed from the remnants from our tropical system that was out in the Gulf earlier. It's kind of merging with that system coming in. So we might see some heavy rains there across portions of Mississippi. So some localized flash flooding a possibility there. And obviously that big storm system out here on the West Coast, they're going to see it out there as well with a little pocket of some action out there to deal with for your Wednesday. So recap on our severe weather outlook here for today. We're talking about New Orleans. We're talking about Baton Rouge, Mobile, Jackson, and those areas are seeing that marginal risk for severe weather here for today. That's what we're looking at for today. So let's go ahead and go into our tropical update here. Again, very imminent. We're going to have a tropical depression here forming. We got a 90% chance. We're likely to see it either forming sometime today or probably tomorrow. So we're going to be dealing with that. And our next named storm is going to be Sarah, S-A-R-A, spelled that way. So looking out there in the tropics right now here for this morning, we're seeing that cluster of storms, starting to see a little bit of rotation in there a little bit as it's starting to get organized. Again, the water temperature out here is sitting like at 87 degrees. Yeah, it's pretty warm out there for the waters, for the system to feed off. And there's a good chance this is going to be not only just a hurricane, but I think it's got a very strong chance of becoming a major hurricane before it finally moves to the north and tracks northward. So here's where the current forecast track is talking about here. Again, you see the ensemble tracks all kind of taking it down here into South Florida. So South Florida, sometime into Wednesday, the way it's looking right now, is going to be the target zone here for that. And as far as the strength's concerned, right now I'd say anywhere between a Cat 2 and a Cat 3. And by the time it makes the turn to the north, and we'll show you this here in the models, it's going to be moving at a pretty good high rate of speed. So I don't know if it's going to really be weakening all that much once it gets to its zenith, its strongest point. It will be moving into colder waters at that time, but I don't think it's going to matter that much, because once that big trough coming in picks it up, it's going to be really hauling at a very high rate of speed. So looking at the ESANS ensemble model here, as you can kind of see what's going on, you can see the system is kind of lingering here for a couple days, and then it really takes the big turn there around that area of high pressure. That's going to be just off to the west. It's going to be at high pressure. It's going to be moving it over here. That's going to be, once it gets into position, it's going to take that and it's just going to ring it right around it. So the placement on high is going to be critical, and its interaction with the big trough that's coming in from the west is going to dictate exactly where along the coast. Anywhere along the Florida coast, I'd say, all the way from Cedar Key all the way down to Key West, really needs to watch this one as far as where it's going to place. I'm still favoring the more southerly solution, say south of Tampa, Fort Myers area. Again, the same area that got hit by Milton needs to be very watchful of this system. It'll be like the third hurricane they've been interacted here in the same season. Just unprecedented, unbelievable. So let's go ahead and talk about the models here. Let's first take a look at the European model here as we watch this thing begin to get its act together here as we go toward Thursday. So as we go toward Thursday, we got our tropical system. The European brings it here pretty close to the coast, so that interaction with the coast might keep it, prevent it from getting too strong too quickly if it gets too close to land. But it does start to drip back out toward the east, and then the pressure starts to fall here. It brings it down to about 970 millibars. So we got a hurricane just off the Central American coast, but it's really close to the coastline. That might inhibit development a little bit. So it drops to 965, sitting there off the Yucatan. Then it crosses the Yucatan. That'll weaken it for sure. So that's good news if it can stay out there, interact with the landmass there, and then it races it off very quickly, basically pretty close to the Cedar Key down there, Sarasota area at 971 millibars. So maybe a Cat 2 hurricane at that point, and then it crosses right across the Florida very rapidly, very quickly. So this is going in toward Wednesday morning, toward noon. That's what it's showing right now. Of course, the timing of this is going to change a little bit, folks, as we get closer. We've got a few days to watch this. Let's compare this with the American GFS model. Let's switch over to this one, and we're going to see this one, again, developing the same general area. So, but it strengthens it very rapidly. Boy, it just really spikes it very quickly, drops it to 958 millibars there by the time we head to late in the day on your Friday. So by Friday about 7 o'clock, you're looking at a very strong hurricane at that point. It meanders back to the east, and then it comes back to the west. It also is going near the Yucatan, which is good. Obviously, interaction with land, it's going to weaken it some, and it brings it back down to about 977 millibars, and then it races it right back to the same general area, maybe just slightly south there at about 971. So both models, the European and the American GFS models, are both showing probably looking like maybe a Category 2 hurricane going somewhere between, say, Sarasota, just south of Tampa, down toward Naples, in that same general area. In this area, again, this will be the third hurricane to hit that same region in the same hurricane season. It's just unreal to see that once again for those folks. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what's steering this. We're going to look at the upper level winds. We're looking at the jet stream here, okay? So what's going on with this is we take this forward, as watch this thing develop. It's getting stuck down here first initially for a few days because it's just, there's nothing down here over here because of very light steering currents here for the moment, all right? So that'll go here for you Thursday. So as we watch this system start to get organized, it's just going to sit there spinning. So it's sitting there as we're going into the weekend. It's just sitting here spinning around as we're waiting for this trough to pick it up. Now, what we're watching here for this weekend is this big high. Look at this high pressure system that moves into the Gulf of Mexico. This is an upper level high pressure system sitting here. It is moving off toward the east. And as it does so, of course, you know the flow around the high pressure is clockwise. So as this thing begins to move off toward the east, it's going to take the system and rotate it. See interacting there together? So we got our high pressure here. Here's our high. And here is our low, or our hurricane sitting right here. It's getting pushed around the system here. And then you got this big trough coming in here from the northwest. So that's going to pick this thing up, and it's going to accelerate it big time. Boom. Just right into South Florida, and then steering it right out to sea. So those are the steering mechanisms that are going to be driving this hurricane. And because of it's just really, we're talking a place with the high pressure and where it makes the turn. And we're talking, all the models got a pretty good agreement. It's going to be going into Florida somewhere. It's just where along that west coast is it going to be going in? That's That's what we're going to be tracking here very closely here on the channel. So let's go ahead and take a look at the overall weather pattern here. Not only are we dealing with a hurricane, we got a big pattern shift with this hurricane going up. We're going to bring some much colder air across the eastern portion of the United States. And yeah, believe it or not, we may actually be dealing with some snow and maybe some blizzard conditions in the same general week. Believe it or not, this is unbelievable. True weather chaos here that's looking here. So here's our storm system we're tracking here for today. This is our little dip here that's bringing our storm system here. Here's our next trough here, digging out here toward the west. As we go ahead and watch this. Again, the big troughs, that's when you get your cold air kind of come on down. They got a big old trough here coming in for this weekend here. As we're getting some ridging here off the west coast here. So you get this big trough coming here as we watch that hurricane for next week kind of move on and wait for that thing to kick on out. It's going to kick on out. And as that hurricane kicks on out, we're going to really open up as the hurricane kicks out, we're going to see some nice cold air here dive down in here across the central portion of the United States. Definitely the coldest air of the season anticipated with this system. And as that kicks on out, I want to take us out to 240. Again, we got this big ridge here. Look at the main jet here, boom, like this. So we got some nice cold air, a very active subtropical jet kind of phasing here. So a very strong storm system here with a big upper level low here across the Great Lakes. So that is definitely a formula there for some very cold air as we go into going into next Friday. So we're talking a Thursday and a Friday, definitely seeing some very cold air moving back in across the United States. Let's go ahead and switch on over here to precipitation mode. Let's go ahead and track the systems here as we track that storm system here in the middle of the country as we go into tomorrow. So this is going to bring some much needed rains into areas of Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and into Kentucky. And then we got, of course, we got our storm systems that are continuing to batter out the region out there on the west coast. So as we continue to watch that timestamp in the upper right-hand corner, this will bring in the rains off the coast there as we go into Friday. So Friday morning looking a little bit wet here along the Carolina coastline as this begins to exit here very early in the morning. And then as we go to the weekend, we get a little bit of a break, just a little bit. I mean, look at Saturday, not looking bad. We're waiting for the energy to come out of the Intermountain region, but Saturday, look at that, Saturday coast to coast, really not looking too bad. That's looking pretty nice indeed, looking pretty good for Saturday. All right, but we're going to bring this forward again as we go into next week. So here we go with our next storm system kind of kicking out of the southwest. We got upper level low, going to bring in some more rain and storms going into Monday morning here across Texas. Another storm system out here on the west coast. And then obviously we're watching our friends down here to the south with our hurricane as they go on. So we've got several different systems kind of interacting with each other. So here's our low coming up here toward the north, bringing in the rains. That'll start off as rain, folks, as it comes up here toward the north, up toward the Dakotas. And then I'll probably switch over to snow as the cold air kind of gets wrapped into that. So we'll get wrapped into this, and then on the back side of this will turn into snow. On the back side of that, we'll show you the snow totals here in a second. So we're looking at the potential where we were talking about on Wednesday, a blizzard here, and then we got a hurricane here. So we're literally talking about a tale of two seasons in here as we head toward your Wednesday of next week. Just something you don't see very often. I can't recall it in my recent memory to see that, but you might see that, and that kicks on out. And then once the system spins up, then we're bringing in the real cold air. You see the 540 line, the freezing line coming all the way down south here. So we got some very cold air coming across the Great Lakes and coming down into the south. So it'll be pretty dippy. Temperatures obviously will modify a little bit out here in the west. Obviously, they will, as that cold air begins to shift to the east here as we go forward. And then as we take this all the way out here to, actually I want to stop right there. So that's about as far as I want to go. So this will go into, say, that following weekend. We got that cold air kind of coming in here behind that hurricane going into the following weekend. So that's the big change. It's coming. You know, we've been advertising here for a couple days now. So as far as the precipitation chances are concerned, let's see, we're going to see the heaviest rains here. Obviously, there's our initial rainfall here from our storm system that's coming into for today and for tomorrow there across the south. Obviously, some very heavy rains out there on the west coast. And as we take this on the way through out here, we'll just leave it at 10 days on this outlook here. As we take it out to 10 days, and we'll see the rain here coming across the south central United States. And then that'll come up into areas in the Dakotas that'll eventually switch it over to snow as that cold air gets wrapped in behind that system. So we got some heavy snows there, possibility. Look at the rainfall equivalents here across portions of Dakota. So we could be looking at feet of snow into that portion of the country as that system pulls up here toward the north as we head into next week. And then as we go into this, we're looking at pretty good rains here, especially out here on the west coast. I mean, really inundating pretty good rains. And only real dry area is going to be out here across the southwest as we head toward the end of the following weekend, going into the 22nd and into the 23rd. All right, so let's talk about the snows, okay? So let's go ahead and bring this on outward here. We get the intermountain. We got those several storm systems that'll bring some snow to the higher elevations of the mountains. That we've been getting those pretty regularly. But this is probably going to be our most significant snowstorm here we've seen so far. So we'll take it out to right about there. And I want to go ahead and talk about the north central United States. So we're talking about the Dakotas here for this potential blizzard here. So we're lighting up here, showing upwards of anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of snow into that zone right through there. So we're looking at some very significant snows in that area here as we head into next week, into Wednesday. So some pretty good snows, even across areas there into southern Minnesota as well, seeing upwards of maybe 10 to 12 inches of snow in those brighter pink colors in there as well. So we got hurricane and we got a snowstorm to talk about on the same day. That's going to be a fun day of weather coverage. I'm telling you that. I'm probably going to be doing coverage for both storms, the blizzard as well as the hurricane. I can honestly say I've never done that at the same time. Let's look here at the temperature profile here. This kind of illustrates the big change coming our way as we go through this weekend. Not looking too bad. Again, we're looking at below normal out here on the West Coast. This is 5,000 feet, 850 millibars. A little bit here as that storm system begins to exit there on the East Coast briefly. And as this thing pulls on off, a big portion of the country, especially the eastern two-thirds this weekend, looking pretty warm relative to what's normal for this time of year. Obviously, we're seeing that pattern we've had most of the fall with the cooler temperatures out toward the west. And as we take this forward, eventually that cold air is going to start to shift to the east. Look at this very pronounced cold front coming up through here. And we're going to see a little bit of cold air kind of tap into this. It's going to push this as we go in beyond Wednesday of next week. So as we go into Wednesday next week, this begins to shift off toward the east as we go in toward Friday. And look at the cold air really kind of dumps here across the eastern half of the country. Temperatures begin to moderate a little bit out here toward the west as we head into the 22nd and into the 23rd. So let's look at the temperature profile real quick. Again, looking at the middle of the country, you can see here for today, for example, here, let me take this up to about where we're currently sitting right here. You can see we're pretty mild here across the deep south. Obviously, a lot of 60s out here, very warm. Cold in the intermountain, up in the higher elevations, or teens and even single digits out there. But overall, it's been so mild up here. It's cool, but not as cold as it should be for this time of year. They've been running well above normal there across the plains. But we're going to go ahead and take this all the way out into next week as we track that cold air. Really starts to push here going into next week. So watch this cold air really begin to put with that frontal system here. As we see the cold dump here coming here, going to go all the way out toward Wednesday. Here starts to pull. You see the cold air by Wednesday. Afternoon highs in the 20s and 30s. Some very, very cold temperatures there. And this will begin to push off toward the east. You see it kind of settling all the way into the deep south, going in toward Friday the 22nd. And then it really kind of comes in really high behind this week as we head towards Sunday the following week. We got 30s all the way to the Gulf. You got 30s all the way here to the Gulf Coast. You got a lot of teens and single digits up here in the high plains. So the cold air is coming. It is definitely coming here. And we'll look at the eastern half of the United States. Let me look at the east real quick. We'll shift this over to the east again. You look at the 30s and 20s all the way to the Gulf Coast. So very cold air coming in. The coldest air of the season coming in for many areas, especially across the deep south, outside of that one quick shot of cold air that they had back in October. So let's look at the Climate Center. I think you're going to notice that we do have a few changes here on the climate outlook. Again, this has been something that's been a broken record here for a while on these daily reports here. But going out from the 18th to 22nd, warm in the east, cold here in the west. But as we go beyond that, going up to 26, oh, look at this. We got below normal here coming in, or near normal coming in across a big chunk of the country, except for areas up there into the northeast. So we definitely start to see that pattern shift as we're bringing some of this cooler air back further off toward the east. Precipitation-wise, staying active here from the 18th to the 22nd. We finally get a chance to dry out here on the West Coast. They've been getting pounded out there. They could deserve a break, so they're going to get that a little bit later in the month. And then as we go deeper into the month, the 20th to the 26th, so we're getting close to Thanksgiving there, a couple days prior, we're seeing drier conditions in the west, still fairly active along the Great Lakes and up here toward the northern plains as we head toward getting toward the end of the month. So a very, very active pattern, boy. And I'm just telling you, man, just seeing the possibility of tracking a blizzard and a hurricane on the same day is Wow, that's all you got to say as a weather nerd like myself. That's something you don't see very often, and yours truly will be doing live coverage for only the landfalling hurricane. We'll be watching the blizzard at the same time, so we're going to be doing both storms. So if you'd like to participate in that live coverage, if you'd like to get these weather dailies, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're alerted on future content, and as always, leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate your support of the channel. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition. You guys be good, stay safe, and we're going to see you next time. Bye, guys.